Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag, the mailbag installment here at AMC Movie News, where all we do is take your mailbag questions. My name is John Campea. I'm the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News. And, Monday through Friday on AMC Movie Talk, we take a couple of questions from the mailbag. And by the way, if you want to know how to send us questions at the mailbag, you can just email us anytime at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. That's where you can send your email questions to us. And every day, Monday through Friday, we take a couple of questions there. But on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, we do nothing but take your mailbag questions. And that is what we are going to do today. So, I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. I'm just going to have us dive right into the first topic of the day. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. And the first question today comes to us from Nick. And Nick writes, "Hi, I love the show. However, I find it odd that you," talking about me, John Campea, "I find it odd that you have said that Guardians of the Galaxy is a risk for Marvel, while at other times saying they have gotten to the point that they can endure one flop. Isn't this a contradiction? In my opinion, real risk was Lucas creating a whole galaxy and somehow making it work. And John has compared Feige to Lucas, and there's no way that comparison is apt. Feige created nothing and doesn't have the personal or professional risk that Lucas had back in the day." Well, there's a couple of things to your question here, Nick, and thanks so much for sending in the question. The first part of your question is about, is Guardians of the Galaxy a risk for Marvel? Because I have said before, Marvel has built up their credibility with the audience so much that if, say, Guardians of the Galaxy is a disaster of a film, then Marvel can survive that. They can survive that bump in the road. Marvel, up to this point, has not put out a disaster of a film. I was not happy with Iron Man 2, but it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a disaster. You may not like Iron Man 3. I did like Iron Man 3, although I have my problems with it, but I liked Iron Man 3. I know a lot of people didn't, but even most people who didn't like Iron Man 3 aren't willing to go to the degree to say it was a disaster. Some people are, but they're a few minority. So they haven't really had what you'd call a colossal failure yet. And but you're always dealing with, some people like to say nobody knew who Iron Man was before the first Iron Man. That's hyperbole. That's really not true. Many, many people had heard of Iron Man and know who Iron Man was. A lot of people know who Thor is. They may not know everything about Thor, but they know who Thor is. They know who Captain America is. They know who the Hulk is. But Guardians of the Galaxy is a different creature altogether. Because even a lot of people who read comic books, don't know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. Because you know how I always say on AMC Movie Talk or AMC Mailbag, I say, those of us who read comic books, we represent the 1%. Like 99% of the people out there do not read comic books and don't know a lot of the stuff that you and I know. So therefore, it doesn't matter if Spider-Man's costume is black lines on it instead of dark gray lines, because it doesn't matter. But with Guardians of the Galaxy, you have the 1% of comic book nerds like us, and then within that 1% is probably only 20% of the 1% even know who the Guardians of the Galaxy are. So this is a big departure. Plus, Iron Man is a millionaire, good-looking playboy. Captain America is Captain America. The Avengers, the Hulk, we all know. Not only are you going with a property with Guardians of the Galaxy that next to nobody, even in the comic book world, had really ever heard of or knew, you're talking about a walking tree and a talking raccoon with a gun. So, when you're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, there are several layers of risk here. Now, I'm going to say this. I have said before that Marvel, because they have done such a good job up till now, they have built enough credibility with the audience and trust with their audience that if they did hit a disaster of a movie, they could survive it. The next film would be fine. But, Nick, what you're suggesting is that because they've built up that credibility, that means there's no risk. But not at all. That's just not true. It is still a big risk. Marvel and Disney are going to be sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into this property. not just for the production of it, but the marketing of it. And I'm sure there are going to be ties with repercussions to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. Whenever you put out any film, it's a big gamble. And Guardians of the Galaxy, I believe, represents the biggest gamble that Marvel has taken so far. Now, can they survive if it is a bust? Yes, they can survive. But even Marvel couldn't survive 2 busts in a row. Marvel is risking, I've already mentioned that Marvel has built up that credibility and that reputation and that trust with their audience, right? But that credibility and trust is on the line. Because if Guardians of the Galaxy is a big piece of trash, and I think it's going to be awesome, I believe they got the right cast, I believe they have the right director, and I trust this studio. But if they do turn out a big piece of trash, that trust that they've built up with their audience, that credibility that they've built up with their audience suddenly becomes severely damaged. And while they can survive and move on and the next film will be fine, Marvel has gone from absolute rock solid footing to very, tenuous footing. Like now the next one's got to be really good to try to repair some of that trust, to try to repair some of that credibility. So when you're talking about are they taking a risk? They're absolutely taking a risk because I think a lot of studios, a lot of filmmakers, even once they get on that firm, solid ground, they still could have played it safe, right? They could have made a Hulk movie. Now a Hulk movie is a very difficult and risky thing in and of itself, but it's a lot more guaranteed of a sure thing than, say, Guardians of the Galaxy with a talking raccoon and a walking tree. They could have just done they could have done their Doctor Strange movie earlier. It's a much safer property. It's a risk. Even Doctor Strange is a risk. But it's a safer property than a talking raccoon with a gun in outer space with a walking tree. There's a lot of things Marvel could have done that would have been the safer play at this point. But they decided they're going to roll the dice and take a big risk. So yes, even though I say they'll survive it, they still have a lot on the line, hundreds of millions of dollars. The credibility they've raised with their audience, the trust they've grown with their audience, all this is at risk. Now, it's at risk every time you put out a movie, but like I said, they're doing it as an outer space opera with a talking raccoon and a walking tree. This is the biggest gamble they've ever taken. And so, yes, I do believe that this qualifies as a gamble. Now, then you go on. I don't understand where you're going with this, Nick, whatsoever. Because you're referencing, and I appreciate that you sent this in, but you're referencing this one thing that I said. I've said it a couple times. I said Nick Feige is now the new George Lucas, the orchestrator, the maestro, if you will, of this grand cinematic universe that is capturing the hearts of millions and millions and millions and millions of people. And he is the grand architect behind it all. Don't be mistaken. It's not Joss Whedon. It's Kevin Feige. And he's really the grand architect behind this all, much like George Lucas. George didn't direct, Empire Strikes Back. George didn't direct Return of the Jedi. A lot of people forget that. But he was still the grand mastermind behind it, pulling the strings and setting the direction of everything. And that's what Kevin Feige is now. George, the most successful film franchise of his age. Kevin Feige with the most successful franchise of his age. I believe that the comparison is very, very justified. But now you'll say that it's not a good comparison because, George, risked his career in putting Star Wars together. Well, okay, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, and remember at the time, George had done THX1136. He had done American Graffiti, but it's not like George Lucas was the hottest name in Hollywood and was risking his professional reputation. No, he was like 99% of the aspiring and starting filmmakers in Hollywood of needing to take some risks to try to get noticed and try to really grow who he was. And Star Wars was that next step for him. But in saying that Kevin Feige and George Lucas aren't a good comparison because they, George, started Star Wars at the time and Kevin didn't. That's like saying comparing LeBron James and Michael Jordan is a bad comparison because Michael Jordan eats Cheerios for breakfast and LeBron James eats Frosted Flakes. I mean, that's a completely separate issue. I'm talking about the guys who are the architects of the most popular and successful film franchises of their age, who are the mastermind architects behind the scenes, guiding and orchestrating the whole thing. That's what these two are, and the comparison is perfect. Now, you could say, oh, you can't compare to George because George had professional risks and he started Star Wars. Maybe, but then I could counter that. And George Lucas is my god. Okay, he is my hero. Make no mistake about that. I crap on his prequels all the time. Because just because somebody's my hero doesn't mean I let them off the hook, but it doesn't change the fact that he is a god, small g, in film and as an influence in my life, and he is the object of my hero worship. I love George Lucas. No one will ever replace him. But that being said, if you're going to make those arguments about George, I can make the argument for Kevin Feige that, yeah, well, George just told one story. You know, whereas you got Kevin Feige coordinated a cinematic universe. You've got Captain America stories, Thor stories, Iron Man stories, Guardians of the Galaxy stories. You got then bring them together with Avengers. You got a 9-film series right now already. So I mean, I could say that, but I'm not, because the object of the comparison here is who they are and what they do. And I believe the comparison is very apt and it works, and it completely works. So thank you for the email. I appreciate you bringing it up. So let's move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from a gentleman by the name of Michael Cluff, who writes, Dear AMC Movie Talkers, I love the show and watch it every day. Well, thank you so much, Michael. We appreciate that. I notice you guys try to censor yourself on the show. I watch the show because I am a movie dork. And as a movie dork, I'm sure that others who watch the show are movie dorks too. And as dorks, we've definitely seen R-rated films that have profanity. Is there someone higher up who tells you guys to keep it clean? Or is it just a decision you guys made? Thanks a lot for the question, Michael. And, I wouldn't take this question on AMC Movie Talk, but like I said, on AMC Mailbag before, I've said this before, I like to use AMC Mailbag as a more laid back and formal kind of show where I'll address some of these kind of behind the scenes questions. So I'll address this one. We don't have swearing on AMC Movie Talk or AMC Mailbag or any of our AMC programming. And if any of you guys have followed me, I know a bunch of you guys have. If any of you guys had followed me before I started doing AMC, back when I was still doing the movie blog, and I used to do, the movie blog Uncut and the movie blog audio edition and those sorts of things, you know that those shows had lots of swearing. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm an adult man. I swear. I do. In my normal everyday life, I swear. It's kind of funny because some people who follow me on Facebook or Twitter, sometimes when I'll put up a post that has some profanity in it, people who are only used to seeing me on AMC are shocked sometimes. It goes, I never knew you swore. Well, I'm a grown-ass man. I swear sometimes. And on my old podcasts, yeah, I would swear sometimes. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't filter myself. And there's been one or two occasions where Schnepp has accidentally dropped an F-bomb or something like that. And we would have to go after the show and edit it out and re-render the show and re-upload it because he would, make a slip of the tongue. So what Michael's asking is, why do we censor ourselves? I mean, it's the internet. I mean, you could watch AMC Movie Talk, click on a link and be watching, gopher porn if you want. Hashtag gopher porn. Anyway, so you can be watching. So, I mean, it's the internet. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, here's the reality of it, okay? AMC, it is remarkable, and this is one of the things I respect about AMC so much, and I talk about this all the time. And one of the reasons, I've never stayed in one place for more than 5 years. Never. And I've been now with AMC for over 5 years. And part of the reason that I stay with AMC is because of the incredible integrity that this company has. They have, I think if I worked for almost any other film exhibitor company, and I could name some of them, but I'm sure at some point they would try to tell me, hey, we got this movie opening, make sure you talk good about it. Or, hey, we got this movie opening, get out and say it's really good so people go see it. AMC, from day one, has given me the reins to do whatever we want, and have created a church and state relationship in the sense that AMC has never once, ever tried to influence or asked us to say something good about a movie that we don't actually already like. They have never once. The closest they've ever did, the closest anyone from AMC ever did, I think like one of the uppity ups at AMC once said to me, hey, you know, we've got this special coming up. Can maybe you get on the show and say something really good about it? But they followed up with, I mean, if you actually like that movie, could you do that? Like, they have never said to me, hey, John, I know you hate The Hangover 2, but can you get on AMC Movie Talk? We're going to be doing a Hangover 2 special screening. Can you get on AMC Movie Talk and talk about and say you actually like Hangover 2? They have never done that. And they have never, ever tried to inject themselves editorially into what we do. So AMC has kind of set up this church and state relationship where, you know, they run AMC and they let me run the editorial, me and my team. And you guys know I have an amazing team. So they have never tried to influence what we do there. Now, that being said, there's almost no companies that would have the integrity to allow you to have that church and state relationship, to have complete editorial autonomy. And that is what they give us. The one thing, the only thing that I ever recall them really asking us for, keep it PG. Keep it PG. Not PG-13. PG. Can you keep it family friendly? Can you keep it so if a parent catches their 11-year-old, and we've got some 11-year-olds that watch AMC Movie Talk, but can you keep it so if a parent catches their 11-year-old watching your show, they don't hear you dropping an F-bomb and then start writing angry emails to AMC? And you know what? If that, in my opinion, even though if I was doing my own show on my own, for some of you who watch my Arrow After show or whatever, you know I'll swear on that from time to time. But honestly, if that is the one thing that AMC asks of us in our AMC Movie News programming, that's pretty damn good, man. And I think I would be something of a stubborn jerk if I were to fight them on that. Honestly, I agree. I agree with where they're coming from, too. So if it was just my own show on my own channel and stuff like that, would I swear from time to time? Yeah, I would, because I do a No More Conversation sometime. But at the same time, considering how much freedom and editorial control and editorial autonomy that AMC allows AMC Movie News to have, the fact that their only request is, hey, don't drop F-bombs, don't swear, keep it PG. John, don't flash your boobs. Considering that is the only thing that they have asked us to do, I think that's pretty damn incredible. So yes, you're right when you ask, is it the higher ups at AMC that ask you not to swear? Yes, it is the higher ups at AMC that ask us not to swear, but I've never fought them on that because I think it's totally reasonable. And considering it's the only thing they've ever asked, I think that's pretty damn great. So there's a little bit of behind the scenes stuff for you for AMC. All right, let's move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Ralph Terry, who writes, hello, AMC Movie Talk. I wanted to ask that since Marvel Studios is a full-fledged film studio, do you think they will ever make movies that are non-comic book related? Keep up the great work. Well, Ralph, you know what? That's a really good question. Marvel Studios is a film production studio. Now, as the name suggests, obviously, they're owned by Marvel, which are now owned by Disney. And unlike a lot of film studios, they were created specifically for the creation of films based around their properties. That's what they were created for. And that's kind of where their focus is. Now, let me draw an AMC Movie News comparison, all right? So AMC Movie News was created to talk about and highlight and bring attention to films and film news surrounding movies that are going to be playing on AMC screens. That's what AMC Movie News was created for, to raise awareness, to inform, hopefully to entertain, give news about films that are playing on AMC screens. That's our mandate. That's what we were created for. Marvel Studios was created with a similar mandate. They were, in a way, they were created to create films based on the properties owned by Marvel. And so, with that being the case, could they make a romantic comedy someday with completely non-comic book characters? They absolutely can. But will they? I don't think they will. I mean, considering that right now they've got a slate of like putting out 2 movies a year, pretty big movies every year, and they're only got plans to get bigger in that realm. And, some rumors say they've got plans all the way to 2023 and all that kind of stuff. If that's the case, I just don't see why they would divert their attention from their primary goal for the very purpose that they were created for, which is to make films based on their existing properties. So could Marvel ever make films that aren't based on Marvel characters and just make like a regular political drama, just make a regular horror film, just make a regular romantic comedy? Absolutely they could. But will they? They seem pretty busy doing what they're doing, and they know what they do, and they're the best at what they do right now. So while they can do it, I don't think they will. I really don't think they will. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Gary M., who writes, I love the show and keep up the awesome job. Thank you so much, Gary. Appreciate that. My question is in regards to the Transformers franchise. Why doesn't Michael Bay make the story more robot-centric versus overtly human? I understand that humans play a part in the Transformers history, but sometimes I feel as if they take up too much time hogging the screen. I want to see more robots fighting robots, no sappy love stories. Thank you, and bring on the filthy. Well, thank you so much for the question, Gary. This is a question, this is an issue that comes up a lot, actually, when we talk about the Transformers and the pros and the cons about the Transformers, and all the time, and I think fairly so. One of the criticisms often levied against the Transformers franchise is that it's supposed to be the Transformers. They're the draw. And quite often, the stories and the screen time are mostly dedicated to human characters as opposed to Transformers. I mean, I love the first Transformers movie, but one of my criticisms is there's a tragic lack of dialogue. I mean, there was really one line between Megatron and Starscream. I mean, one of the main reasons I was so excited about seeing a Transformers movie is I wanted to see the constant banter between Megatron and Starscream. And there was like one piddly line between them. And meanwhile, there was like 85,000 lines for Shia LaBeouf, as Christian Harloff calls him, Shia LaBeouf. I mean, that doesn't cut it. But at the same time, I think one of the things that Paramount goes for with Transformers is understanding that they also want to reach the non-Transformer audience. They want to reach not just people like me who grew up playing with the Transformers toys. They want to reach people who didn't. And if they put in a love story and they make it human-centric, then it's more relatable to a bigger audience. The other thing is this, is that every second that a Transformer is on screen is money. I mean, it's money. Just imagine sitting in a movie theater, watching a Transformers film, and Optimus Prime comes on screen. For every second he's on screen, imagine like leaf blowers just blowing $100 bills into the air. That's what's happening. Every second of action, every second that a Transformer's on screen is money being thrown at the screen. And so it makes it quite expensive and cost prohibitive. And the Transformers films are already very expensive movies. Now, am I saying that that's why it's a good idea that they not have more Transformers as opposed to humans? Not at all. I agree with you. The Transformers movies need to be more Transformers-centric than they have been and not human-centric. And one of my fears, even though I'm cautiously optimistic about this new Transformers movie, Age of Extinction, my one hesitation, my one fear, my one worry is that by putting Mark Wahlberg in this movie, you've almost guaranteed that this movie is going to be about Mark Wahlberg and not about Optimus Prime. And I'm worried about that. Now, I'm not going to judge it until I see it, but I'm saying that's my fear. So I'll go in and see it, and hopefully it'll have a better balance. But I'm worried that it's going to be really more, Wahlberg-centric than anything else. And but I'm still optimistic about it. I've really liked the latest trailers. I think they look really great, high intensity, high octane, and we'll just see how it goes. But as to why they feel that they need to have it human to be more relatable, and number two, the more that Transformers are on the screen, is just the more expensive the film is. All right, let's move on to the next question today. And the next question today comes to us from Darren Schaefer. And Darren Schaefer writes, Hi guys, longtime viewer and fan if the show. I think you meant of the show. Thanks so much, Darren. My question is, what happened to the movie Welcome to Yesterday? I've seen preview after preview for months, and on opening weekend, it just disappeared. Do any of you know what happened to it? Thank you, and thank you for your time, and keep up the great work. Well, actually, Welcome to Yesterday, Darren. It actually has a new title now, if I'm not mistaken. Yesterday, I gotta look. I forgot what it was, but it has a new title. It's called Project Almanac now. So Welcome to Yesterday is now known as Project Almanac. And what this, for those of you who haven't heard of it, you might have seen some of the trailers because they changed the release date. The release date is now January of 2015. So I believe it was supposed to open in 2014. That's why you saw the trailers. But it's been changed. It's now open in 2015. And I believe they changed the title to Project Almanac. Or maybe I might have that reversed. Maybe it was Project Almanac and they've changed it to Welcome to Yesterday. But no. It was Project Welcome to Yesterday and it's been changed to Project Almanac. And it's about these kids, these teenagers who find the components for and plans for a time machine, and they start playing with time, and then consequences ensue and stuff like that. It actually looks kind of interesting. Speaking of the Transformers, it's produced by Michael Bay. I can't remember who's directing it though, but the trailer looked intriguing. I'm not going to say I loved the trailer, but I will say it did look intriguing to me. I'm curious to see it. But yeah, they changed the release date. It's now opening up in 2015. If I'm not mistaken, it's January 30th, 2015. So the movie is still coming. Keep your eyes for it. Don't worry. You weren't crazy. There really were trailers for it, and it is on its way. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Tex. Is Tex the one who this comes from today? Yes. Tex the Slayer writes, "Hey guys, what are the chances we get a new He-Man movie? He's got an epic redesign in comics, and his current tone and overall feel would work well on the big screen. The current comics feel a lot like the way Krypton felt in the Man of Steel movie. He's even got an updated costume. What do you guys think?" Well, there is a new Masters of the Universe movie coming. There is a new He-Man movie coming. How far off and, is still up to guess. Now, for a long time, G.I. Joe Retaliation director and director of that Justin Bieber documentary. I think he did 2 Justin Bieber documentaries. Anyway, Never Say Never, something like that. John M. Chu, for quite a long time, was attached to be the director of it. And then nothing. Boom, he's off. And now he's doing Gem and... I kid you not, I'm not making this up. John M. Chu is no longer working on He-Man. He is now working on Gem and the Holograms. Do I need to say any more? Anyway, so he left, but they did have a script. And then a couple of months back, it might have been like April, word came out that Kick-Ass 2 director Jeff Wadlow, who I believe was also working on a script for X-Force. Anyway, Jeff Wadlow came on, it was announced, to rewrite the script for He-Man and Master of the Universe. So movement. And then... our AMCer Christian Harloff, who works on AMC with AMC Movie News, he also has his own site and channel Schmoes Know. His site Schmo Know reported that Wadlow was not only writing the film but also directing it. Now, I haven't seen anybody confirm that part, that he's also directing it. The only thing that I know for sure is that he is rewriting the script and probably has it finished. He's probably rewritten the script by now. And I have yet to hear confirmation that he is going to direct it as well. But according to Christian, he's been signed on to direct. But once again, take that with a grain of salt. We haven't heard confirmation of that from anybody. So, when is a He-Man movie coming? Yes, a He-Man movie is coming. Could it be stuck in development hell for another long time? Yeah, it could. But it looks like there's some movement going on. So we'll keep you informed as best as we can. Keep your fingers crossed because, it's going to come. Eventually, it's going to come. So just keep your fingers crossed for now. Okay, and now we get to the final question of the day. And the last question today for this Saturday comes to us from Harry Dell, who writes, "I love you all and love the show." Thanks so much, Harry. Appreciate that. My question is, do you think Disney will be interested in making a movie based on the story of George Lucas, speaking of George Lucas, during the time that he was creating, filming, and finally presenting and shocking the world with the movie Star Wars? I hope so. Because okay, look, I'm biased. Obviously, I have Star Wars in my blood. But seriously, even if you're not a major Star Wars fan, which makes you less of a man, in my opinion, just saying. But honestly, even if you're not a big Star Wars fan, you cannot help but be fascinated with the story of George Lucas and who this guy is. Seriously. If you ever watched any of the big exposés on him and any of the documentaries that really kind of talk about his life, read about his life. His life is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And the process, and the funny thing is, when you look at this guy and you look at his personality, and look, seriously, George is a good man. Like, just read up on him. George Lucas is a good man. Like, with all the nerd rage that me and a bunch of other people feel about the prequels, make no mistake about it. George Lucas is a small g god in this business. The way he has influenced Hollywood as a whole, the technologies that he has driven, the style in which filmmakers do. I mean, there's a whole generation of filmmakers right now who talk about one of their biggest influences ever is Star Wars and what that's done and how that's shaped them and influenced them and all that kind of stuff. Like George Lucas, you can't overstate his importance in Hollywood and in the history of Hollywood and where we've come and the progression of things. He's an icon. And when you really start looking into who this guy is and the things he has done in his life and the way that Star Wars came about and the way that everything evolved and how he got the most genius move in film history was when making his deal with 20th Century Fox, he retained the merchandising rights, which is what made him a billionaire. It is an incredible story. Seriously, do yourself a favor and look at someone and then look me in the face and tell me it wouldn't make a great movie. Now, whether George would let them make a movie based on his life, I doubt it. He is such a private person that I have my doubts that that'll ever happen in his lifetime. But at some point, somebody's got to make a movie based on his life. And particularly around that time, you're right, the Saving Mr. Banks analogy is perfect. Particularly around the time of him making Star Wars, I think would be just primo. I'd be all for it. That'd be amazing. All right, folks, well, that'll do it for me for this installment of AMC Mailbag. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's amazing that you would let me share a part of your weekend with you. Don't forget, lots of great films playing at AMC theaters everywhere right now. You can head over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. And don't forget, if you like what we're doing here and you like these shows, make sure you go up there and click on the subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. And by the way, just click on that thumbs up button too. It's just a good way of communicating to me and the rest of the world that you like the shows that we're doing. So that'll do it for me, folks. Thanks again. We'll be back again tomorrow. My name is John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.